First of all, congrats on the movie. Congrats on this and Box Cutter. Big fan of that movie too.
Oh no.
Um, Definitely want to get started. And you can correct me if I'm wrong on this, but you have been attached to play Dean Youngblood for quite some time. Back to when Charles Officer, who this was a big passion project for him. I remember talking to him a lot and how excited he would get talking about this. And you were attached to it back then, and then sadly, we lost Charles,
Yes.
and it went over to Hubert Davis, someone who had previously made a film about hockey. And I was wondering for you what it was like kind of being this common denominator that kind of helps to move this from one era to the next, and what it was like going through that period.
Yeah. You're right in that I was attached to it for a while. It's funny, I was just telling the story earlier that before I had gotten the job, I was like really gunning for it. I was telling my managers like, hey man, whatever I can do to get in there with Charles, like please, I'll make it happen. And I remember during TIFF, I heard that Black Ice was screening. So I was like, oh, you know what? This might be integral for my prep. I hadn't got the job yet, but I was like really moving with the intention that I was going to do it. So I was like, this just feels like something I should watch. So I went to that screening, and at the screening, after it was done, Hubert was on stage with his producing partner, and they were like, oh, is Charles Officer here? And lo and behold, Charles yelled from the audience, "Yeah, I won't miss it. I wouldn't miss it for the world." And that was the last day that I saw Charles, and the first day that I got to be aware of Hubert. So it felt really, it's weird when like you lose someone and a life is lost to say something felt like in alignment, you know. But that like kind of made me feel like once Hubert came on board, I was like, oh, this there was something there that felt connective. And of course, Hubert had a relationship with Charles, so that also felt like it was a through line. So Charles more felt like the guiding force and the line that was always there, opposed as like to me. And then it felt like it became about like even when we did go to production, it did become about him and trying to make him proud and putting together a film that he would have watched and hopefully liked.
Yeah, and with Hubert, did you have any conversations with him about the sport of hockey in terms of what you guys would talk about since he was just coming off a documentary about the Black experience in hockey?
Man, our conversations were like really deeply about Dean and like what his experience would have been like. So, we talked heavily about when he started playing hockey, if he was doing it for himself, when it became something he was doing for himself or something he was doing for his dad, and like trying to get those intricacies and trying to figure out what his experience has been like and what shaped him and what hasn't, So we didn't necessarily get too much into the real world hockey experience in our conversations. There were things that we discussed like on an overall arching level, but yeah, a lot of my conversations with Hubert were like really about like character and like finding his heart so much.
What I need you to understand is that nobody's offering you any free handouts. Now, hockey will teach you what you need to survive in this world. But you gotta work 3 times harder than the next man. How's that taste, boy? Don't work too long and hard for you to let anybody take this from you.
Yeah, and Dean Youngblood is such a deep character to play. There's a lot to unpack, I think, with him, especially since you have someone who is an athlete that has a chance of playing at a very high level, which comes with its own degree of needing to lock in, know your talent, and know your worth. And at
Yes.
the same time, you also have the other side of him that's a little bit more insecure, living in the shadow of his father and all of that. And I was wondering, when you're looking at this character, is there a certain thing that you locked in on that was kind of like, okay, this is the thing that unlocks who this person is at his heart?
I think that's a good question. And the thing, I don't know if I thought about it then, but thinking about it now is probably his love for hockey and because that has to be like his founding core. Because if he doesn't have the love for it, then it's not gonna he wouldn't be able to go through all the things that he was going through. So I think for me, as I was training and getting better at skating and getting better on the ice and all of these things, I found myself to a joy for the sport and for the game and for the skill level and the ability it takes to play it at a high level. So I think, Dean would have to have that connectivity in it, and that would be his through line as to why he's going through all of this and why he's finding himself on both extremes. It has to be in its core for his love of it.
Yeah, and it also plays into the fact that I think this movie has something really interesting to say about how there's a difference between playing something aggressively and playing something violently. And I think
Mhm.
when you talk about hockey, there's a fine line to that, especially when you're dealing with someone like Dean who has a lot going on in his head. And I was wondering if that was something that you ever thought about, like in terms of how an athlete works and in terms of how they bring their own level of aggression, but they have to sometimes keep that in check and how that sometimes gets the better of Dean at points.
Right, right. Yeah, something that I did in my prep was considering athletes who had and not just athletes, but people in general who grew up in like a two-parent home versus single parent home. And then what's the difference between the single parent home being the dad and the single parent home being the mom, and how those things kind of affect you. I think of like you see all these like great athletes who but then I also connected it to this idea of like someone like Michael Jordan, who's pretty intense and really on it. And then someone like LeBron James, who's pretty light, but they're both great at what they do. I see now you look at it like to hockey, and I don't know, I feel bad, referencing I don't even think I'm going to go there. But, there's like just what I'm trying to get at is that there isn't one way to approach high level sport and like your mindset towards it. As long as you're focused on your ability at the sport and how serious you take that, you can be lighthearted, you can be serious, and it's just finding a through line that isn't too far. And I think Dean struggled with this idea of like, I am gonna be locked in, I'm gonna be like this killer mentality. And he just had to find a better through line that allowed him to approach the game with such intensity, but didn't let it get the best of him.
Hamilton Mustangs, they're calling up two players to fight for one spot. This is Dean's only shot to get back on the radar.
Let's go.
You got good wheels, man. We could have used you like 30 games ago.
You have to take me down? You want to go, Rook? Well, because you can't. Hey!
And the relationship between Dean and his father, played by Blair Underwood in this, it really does inform who Dean is as a person. So much of it is coming from that
Right.
relationship. And I was wondering what it was like to work on that dynamic with Blair to try to add an extra layer to your character and where he's coming from.
Yeah, that's a great question because like I remember when we first started filming, I did a lot like it was top heavy with a lot of my fight scenes. So the first week of filming, I was just beating everybody up. I remember I said to Hubert, I was like, dude, I don't know if this is gonna work because like where is he getting this from, And I'll never forget, dude, Blair's very first day, he comes up to me and there's a scene where he puts his hand on Dean's shoulder and he goes, "Is that how I taught you how to fight?" And when we took the first pass at it, he came up to me and he was smiling. And I was like, "Yeah, this is not gonna work, man." And then on a dime, he just switched up. And I was like, whoa, and it's, his ability to play like the layer of a dad who is loving. His love is just he doesn't know how to do it in softer ways. It is a lot of love, but it's kind of misguided love, and that misguides Dean in his actions. So when I literally 2 seconds into that scene, I don't think they used my coverage because I was just watching Blair. I probably was terrible in that scene, but I was just watching him. But like after we started doing it, he is so good of an actor that he's just going to allow you to drop deeper into your work. And he brought so much layers to it that I felt his love, and then I felt his guidance to the other direction. So he's fantastic.
My dad's been telling me this story my whole life.
They're letting you play, huh? I'm talking to you.
Am I supposed to know you, bro?
This is gonna be fun.
Like, I always got to keep my guard up. You never know who's going to stand in your way.
You don't know how many guys come through this league scoring fancy goals and then disappear?
You've been looking for a reason to send me home from jump.
Look, we all want to play so bad. Then you realize that you have to play it according to their rules.
Hey!
You actually have the chance to go far with this sport, and you're wasting it all. Go out there and give them hell.
Yes, ma'am.
And the last thing I wanted to talk to you about, kind of talking also about Blair, but you get to share the screen with a bunch of really well-known veteran character actors that I have a huge affinity for. Blair and Sean Doyle and Tamara Podemski, people that I always see and always love to see going on. And I was wondering for you what it's like to be the person who's still like the focal point of the film, but also you get to interact with some truly like top level talent as the people that have to guide Dean along the way.
Yeah, dude, it's a dream. Like it allows me to, one, I learned a ton because they all are seasoned vets isn't even the word. They're all just great actors, especially like, Sean, Tamara, like they took care of me, like they had conversation. It wasn't like they just came, did their thing and like never, like they would have really intentional conversations with me. And they all had relationships with Charles. So that was, Blair didn't, but like, when we talk about the Canadian side, like they knew him so there was just a care for me that allowed me to rely on them. And then they uplifted me because they're just such great artists, So yeah, I'm glad that you said that because I couldn't have done it without them,